Chapter 870 One-Eye and the Jiangnan District Investigation Captain. After boarding the ship, Jang E was carefully checked again before being taken to the cabin. The shackles on his hands were specially made, black metal, and there was a red light flashing on them. It was a miniature bomb. Once Jang E tried to break free or resist, it would be detonated immediately. Captain Cardier Connor couldn't wait and asked him to bring Jang E to him immediately. Looking at the ordinary-looking yellow man in front of him, a smile appeared on his face. "Tell me, what's your name? What position do you hold in Huashu country?" Jang E looked up at him and said lightly, "My name is Jang E, captain of the Jiangnan District Investigation Team." Connor heard this, and his mind didn't come back to his senses for a while. After all, they basically don't deal with the Jiangnan District on weekdays, and they don't know what the captain of the investigation team means. It's just that the name Jang E made him a little familiar. "E Zhang. I seem to have heard this name somewhere." However, the next moment, he saw the yellow-skinned young man raised a cruel smile at the corner of his mouth. Connor's brain speed suddenly increased. He thought of an incident that had attracted much attention internationally some time ago. The Neon Ronin landed in the Jiangnan area of Huashu country, and then a captain-level figure in Jiangnan rebelled. Then the person who turned the tide and calmed the crisis was Jang E. F***K. Connor's pupils shrank, and he cursed. But Jang E's hands had already appeared black flame-like substances, which directly melted the sturdy handcuffs. "Don't do it, don't stop. Anyway, in order to protect the secret of the source of God, you must tear your face with the Colombian Navy. Then, there is no need to worry about anything. Everyone on this ship today must die." The surging void power erupted directly in the cabin of the Copernicus. No one on the entire ship could imagine that on this inconspicuous civilian ship above the vast ice sea, they would actually encounter the highest-level combat power in the Jiangnan region. Connor was less than 3 meters away from Jang E. Between life and death, he used his supernatural power at the first time. Dragon Beast Transformation. A layer of green scales attached to his whole body, and his body also soared to more than 3 meters in height. His hands turned into a pair of huge and terrifying, sharp claws that were more than 1 meter long. The captain of the Copernicus, Lieutenant Colonel Cardier Connor, had an ability index of 6,500 points. Looking at the entire Columbia Ocean Fleet, he was also an upper-class alien. But at this time, Jang E was racing against time, so he would not have any combat power reserved. The flames of the void wrapped around Jang E's body and burned fiercely, and then spread madly in all directions. Jang E himself held the Holy Inquisition and hit Cardier Connor himself. Connor's indestructible dragon claws were cut like tofu the moment they touched the Holy Inquisition, burning the black flames of the void. The Holy Inquisition cut off his pair of huge dragon claws and chopped them directly along his head. Without any obstacles, his whole body was split vertically from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet, and directly turned into 2 halves. "Ah!" Jang E roared, waving the sword in his hand nonstop, and began to destroy the entire ship. What he wanted to do was to break the communication system of the Copernicus to prevent it from contacting the Ocean Fleet headquarters on the Ropefly Island. Although doing so would definitely let the other party discover the abnormality at the first time. However, at least it would make the other party misjudge his strength. As long as the other party didn't know that he, who represented the highest combat power in the Jiangnan region, had come to the ocean, the other party's reaction would not be timely and accurate. And this period of time was Jang E's chance to escape. Boom! Jang E's entire person burst out with the strongest combat power, just like dismantling a Gundam with his bare hands. He wanted to dismantle the entire ship and kill every soldier. Facing such a top-level alien with super combat power, the soldiers on the Copernicus were simply unable to resist. Even the Columbia Navy soldiers, who were armed to the teeth and proud of being the world's strongest navy, were like paper when they met Jang E. The flame of the void burned fiercely, but the way it killed people was not to burn, but to erase directly. From this point of view, Jang E's way of killing is very humane. They didn't even have time to feel the pain before they were swallowed by the void. On the Jinfeng, Che Haiqing and others were still mocking Jang E and Lao Tian and others. They saw Jang E being handcuffed, and Lao Tian and others threw down their weapons without saying a word, and then began to vent their emotions in recent days. Hey, you guys, weren't you very arrogant in the past? You can't be arrogant now. I am a citizen of Colombia, and from now on you are only worthy of being slaves and serving us. Lao Tian and others just looked at them coldly without any response. They trusted Jang E very much, so they didn't bother to pay attention to these jumping clowns. However, this approach made Che Haiqing and others feel that they were scared. But at this moment, a deafening explosion suddenly came from the Copernicus in the distance. Everyone's attention was attracted. The Copernicus, 5 miles away, actually emitted wisps of black smoke, which looked wrong. It was just too far away, so no one could see clearly what was happening there. Several Colombian soldiers were stunned for a moment. They were dumbfounded and didn't understand why the advanced Copernicus would be abnormal. One soldier quickly took out the walkie-talkie and tried to contact the other side. But the next moment, a man jumped down from the deck out of thin air. Jang E's eyes were extremely terrifying. It was the coldest killing intent after killing many people. Swish, swish. The holy judge casually waved twice in the air, passing through several elegant arcs. The 6 Colombian Navy on the ship didn't react to what was going on, and their bodies were cut into 7 or 8 pieces. The head was split in 2, and the arms and legs were also broken in 2. They died in an instant unconsciously, and there was not even any fear in their eyes. Silence. The silence was extremely depressing. Everyone in the Yenlu group was stunned by Jang E's sudden appearance and the sudden killing of all the Navy soldiers. Jang E made a handsome knife flower and swung it hard, and a large pool of blood splashed on the deck. He didn't even look at Che Haiqing and others beside him. Instead, he said to Lao Tian, "Leave here at full speed immediately and turn off all radars and communication systems. Even if the Colombian Navy has a powerful reconnaissance capability, as long as they turn off all communication devices, the other party will not be able to find them. But doing so will also cost a great price. The other party can't find them, and they will lose their direction in the vast ocean. Just like a person who is traveling in the night, if you turn off the light in your hand, it will be difficult for others to find you. But you have to go into the darkness yourself." But now, Jang E can only choose to do this. Otherwise, if the large forces and top aliens of the Colombian Navy arrive, even he dare not guarantee safety. Chapter 872, Lord of the Ocean. After receiving Jang E's order, Lao Tian arranged for people to go over and operate without saying a word. As an old sailor, he naturally understood the danger of doing so. But at the moment, this is their only choice. Turn off the lights, and everyone wanders in the dark forest. Only the weak have a chance to survive. Otherwise, they will only be killed by the strong. The members of the rock flow group stared at Jang E in astonishment. They still don't know what happened. Boom. 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 The continuous explosions sounded in the distance, raising waves of terrifying waves, which have always affected the Gan Foam. Everyone looked over and found that the powerful Colombian warship Copernicus was burning with flames, and then the hull tilted rapidly and began to sink into the sea. That warship was sunk. Li Zhongyu was full of disbelief. They didn't understand what the outside world had become. They couldn't understand the destructive power of an alien like Jang E. But now, the real Copernicus is finished. Jang E appeared on the Gan Foam intact. The answer is self-evident. Jang E destroyed a powerful Colombian warship by himself. Everyone looked at Jang E as if he were a monster, or even a god. Even Sun Wanqi, who talked the most, held back the words she wanted to blame Jang E. She was completely scared. But at this moment, the expressions on some people's faces were as dead as ashes, fear and despair. It was Che Haiqing and his gang who were still laughing at Jang E and Lao Tian and others a few seconds ago. They thought the overall situation was settled, and they used their intelligence to destroy Jang E and other people on the Gan Foam. And they also obtained the blessing of the Colombian Navy, and they could live a happy life from then on. But the disillusionment of the dream came unexpectedly. In their minds, the Colombian Navy, which was invincible and strong enough to find an opponent, a Chuanpu-class cruiser, was sunk by Jang E alone. He is not a human, he is a monster. The betrayers have already felt the approach of death. But Jang E didn't even look at them, and the pressure was at its maximum. Che Haiching made a gulp sound in his throat, raised his hand, and forced out a flattering smile. That, Mr. Zhang, listen to my explanation. Jang E didn't even look at him, but walked into the cabin on his own. He was going to call Zhou Kur. In addition, he had to explain the situation here to Zhu Zheng and ask him to arrange people to come to help. Zhu Zheng would definitely find a way, unless he was willing to give up the important information about the source of God. Zhu Yonk walked to Zhang E with an embarrassed look. I'm sorry, I just thought. Go contact Zhu Shuai, this is the last time. After the contact, your communication equipment will basically not be used again in the short term. Zhu Yonk was already scared at this time. The pressure brought to her by the Colombian Navy just now was too strong. And the stronger pressure came from Zhang E, who sank the Copernicus alone. But aren't we just headless flies? There is no other way now. We can only take it one step at a time. Things happened too suddenly, and Zhang E didn't think about what to do in the future. But at least now, they have to leave this dangerous place and ask for help. Zhang E and Zhu Yonk came to Zhu Yonk's room. Tommy's howling made Zhang E frown, and Zhu Yonk closed her eyes hard, trying to calm her anger. She regretted her original decision more than once. Bringing this child, except for causing a huge burden, has no meaning. She called Sun Wanqi over and asked her to take the child to another place quickly, so as not to delay their work. Then she closed the door and took out the communication equipment to contact Zhu Zheng. Zhang E quickly informed Zhu Zheng of the incident. Zhu Zheng's face really became extremely serious because a head-on collision with the Colombian Navy was what they least wanted to see. But things have already happened, and it is meaningless to avoid it. Have you got the information about the source of God? Zhu Zheng asked. Zhang E smiled slightly, and then pointed to his head. Zhu Zheng was silent for a moment. He rubbed the back of his hand with his hand, and Zhang E could see his hesitation. But after a few seconds, Zhu Zheng said, Zhang E, your ability is enough to support the ship drifting on the sea. You're doing the right thing. Temporarily cut off all external contacts and never let them find out. I will use all means to support you. Zhang E said, Okay, I will do as you say. I am waiting for the arrival of reinforcements at sea. He did not make too many requests. The current situation looks very dangerous, but it is not safe at all. But that's not for Zhang E. When it's absolutely necessary, he still has one last way, which is to abandon the entire ship and take Zhou Kud away alone. It depends on how important Zhu Yonk is in Zhu Zheng's mind. Anyway, he and Zhou Kud will be fine. Zhu Zheng continued, Next, you must change your course and not pass through the waters around Neon. It's best to take a detour from the southwest area. If you get there, I'll let the Rose Squad join you. They happen to be on a mission in the southwest waters. Remember, Zhu Zheng's eyes showed a warning. Don't have a head-on conflict with the Colombian Navy. Because according to the current intelligence, there is an alien with an ability index of up to 18,000 points in their ocean fleet. His code name is Lord of the Oceans. It is precisely because of this person's existence that the expansion of the East China Sea region to the ocean region will be very difficult. So, you must never rely on your own strength to confront them head-on. Zhu Yonk didn't react much to this, because she didn't understand what an ability index of 18,000 points meant. But Zhang E felt a chill on his back. That was a powerful alien whose ability index was nearly twice his, a powerful existence at the level of Ypsilon. Zhang E took a deep breath. I understand. I will head towards the Southwest Sea. Zhu Zheng comforted him. Don't worry too much. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack for them to find your location in the vast ocean. It's not that easy. And I will also find a way to get reinforcements for you. Delay the strength of the ocean fleet. The reinforcements Zhu Zheng mentioned could only be the East China Sea region, the only one in the ocean region that could compete with the Columbia Ocean Fleet. Among the 6 regions of Huashu country, the East China Sea region has the most powerful navy, and its strength is even close to that of the Xinjiang region, which has the strongest comprehensive strength. Jang E asked curiously, "Are there also aliens at the level of Epsilon in the East China Sea region?" Zhu Zheng looked dimly. In this regard, the East China Sea region has never admitted it. But I think it is very likely. Chapter 873. Into the Darkness. After listening to Zhu Zheng's words, Zhang E felt relieved. However, after the call ended, they could only drift blindly on the sea. Without the guidance of the advanced navigation system, they could only rely on the sailing experience of old sailors such as Lao Tian to grope their way to the Southwest Sea area to bypass the pursuit of the Columbia Ocean Fleet. Zhu Yonk also wanted to say something to Zhu Zheng, but Zhu Zheng just told her lightly that everything would be done according to Zhang Yi's instructions. Zhu Yonk nodded and agreed. The communication ended quickly, and Zhang E confiscated the communication device directly to prevent Zhu Yonk from having a sudden brain nerve attack in the future and contacting the outside world privately. "I will return the things to you after we return to the shore," Zhang E said. Zhu Yonk pouted. "You just don't trust me." Zhang E nodded. "You still have some self-knowledge." Zhu Yonk was angry, but she could only clench her fists and sulk alone. Zhang E ignored her and went back to the room first to take Zhou Kuer out of the dark room. Then he briefly explained the current situation to her and took her to the control room in front. "We will drift on the sea next, but don't worry too much. With me here, no one can hurt you," Zhang E said, looking at Zhou Kuer deeply. "But you should also pay attention to one thing. Don't have feelings for anyone on the ship, because we have to abandon them at any time and leave by ourselves." Zhou Kuer pursed her lips and said with a bright smile, "Don't worry, I'm not a fool like Zhu Yonk. We have gone through so many life and death crises together, and I know what to choose." Zhang E nodded with satisfaction. Girls who have been baptized by the cruel Doomsday are sensible. The two came to the control room. At this time, the entire ship had completely shut down all communication equipment, and even the communicators in everyone's hands were confiscated by Lao Tian. Anything that might send a signal to the outside must be excluded. Otherwise, they might be attacked by intercontinental missiles in a few minutes. Zhang E has never tried to use the Dimension Gate to absorb intercontinental missiles. But according to his speculation, with his current strength, if he wants to absorb that terrifying power, the alien space will be in danger of collapse. This is the power of human technology's top weapons and equipment, which should not be underestimated. Zhang E looked at the cabin where all the electronic instruments had been turned off. Lao Tian handed over a nautical chart. "We have followed your instructions and are heading west at full speed. But if we want to return to Huashu country, we have to sail at least 5,000 nautical miles. That is more than 9,000 kilometers of route. In addition, there is no navigation system, and we must rely on human experience to explore the route. It is unknown how long we will drift on the sea. Even..." Lao Tian licked his dry lips, his tone a little hesitant. Zhang E said, "Just say what you want to say. Now is not the time to talk nice words." Lao Tian said, "It's not surprising that we drifted on the sea for half a year." Zhang E frowned slightly, but this situation was also within his expectations. "Don't worry about it for now. Just go west. We are not short of supplies. It's okay to spend more time. The key is to avoid the ocean fleet." He stretched out his hand and nodded on the map. "If we go west and then north, we will reach the area of the South Pacific Islands. I will find a way when we get here." Zhang Yi's tone was very firm. This surprised Lao Tian and others. "But if our ship appears near here, it will definitely be discovered by the surrounding countries. It is difficult to guarantee that they will not inform the Colombian Navy on the Ropefly Island." Zhang Yi said lightly, "I naturally have a way. You don't have to worry. Just do as I say." He was not unprepared for this voyage. Although the current situation is very troublesome, it is also within his plan. This is not because he is a genius, but he is used to considering things in the worst way, so as to make the most thorough preparations. When Lao Tian and others heard Zhang Yi say this, they felt a little more secure in their originally unconfident hearts. Everyone hurriedly performed their duties, controlled the Gan Foam at full speed, and headed towards the western waters. As for what will happen next, Jang E didn't know. He could only take it one step at a time. And the biggest hope may still depend on Zhu Zheng's arrangements. Mr. Zhang, what should we do with those guys? Old Tian winked outside. When Jang E mentioned them, his eyes narrowed immediately, and his undisguised murderous intent made old Tian swallow his saliva. He rarely saw Jang E so angry. And at this time, blood was necessary to slightly ease his inner anger. If it weren't for the betrayal of Che Haicheng and those bastards, they would have been able to pass through the patrol area of the Columbia Navy soon. As long as they entered the territorial waters of Huaxi State, they would be completely safe. But they didn't expect that they would fail in the end because of those dogs. Let's go and talk to them. Jang E had a smile on his face, and his smile was unusually bright. Lao Tian and the crew's eyes were also full of murderous intent. No one didn't hate those bastards. They walked out of the cabin. At this time, 2 crew members were holding guns and guarding them on the deck. Che Haicheng, Bai Mo, Xia Yunfan, Eisenman, and Rudolph. These 5 people knelt on the deck, trembling. Not far away, the people from the Rock Flow group were also there. But their eyes were full of worry, and they didn't care much about the lives of these people. They were here to wait for Jang E to come and tell them about the current situation. Soon Wenxi hid behind Zhu Yunk, her face pale. When the Colombian soldiers came just now, she also wanted to go with those people. She was afraid that Jang E would also settle accounts with them. But Jang E just gave her a cold look. He knew that Sun Wenxi did not participate in this event. She was with Zhu Yunk on weekdays, and she didn't have such conditions. The point is, she is so stupid that Che Haicheng and his group of guys can't possibly play with her. She is not bad. She is just stupid. But stupid people are often more disgusting than bad people. Jang E walked onto the deck. As soon as Che Haicheng saw Jang E, he immediately knelt on the ground and kowtowed hard, shouting, "Mr. Zhang, I am innocent. They forced me to do that. Please forgive me this time. I will definitely be your dog, and I will do anything you ask me to do." Bai Mo's face was pale, looking at Jang E begging constantly. "Don't kill me, I know I was wrong. Please no, please." Jang Yi's face calmed down. He squatted down, and his eyes swept across everyone's face. Che Haicheng and others felt as if a knife had cut across their faces. Some people even wet their pants. "Tell me, how did you do it?" Jang E asked lightly. Chapter 870, 4 Chuan Xiang. Soon, the few people who wanted to survive revealed the whole plan. Xia Changming, who was watching the show, suddenly turned black. "Mr. Zhang, I definitely didn't conspire with them." Jang E glanced at Xia Changming and said lightly, "I know that you are not to blame for this matter. If you really want to blame, I, as the captain, should be the first person responsible." Xia Changming heard this, and the heavy stone in his heart was immediately put down, and he couldn't help but moisten his eyes. It is really rare to meet such a good leader who doesn't blame others. "Drag that woman over too." Jang E pointed at Jin Jimei in the crowd. When Che Haicheng and others were about to run, Jin Jimei was stupid. Because from the beginning to the end, Che Haicheng kept a secret and didn't tell Jin Jimei the purpose of letting her do that. She is just a puppet. After staying in the Scylla entertainment circle for a long time, she has also learned not to ask too much about things that she shouldn't ask. In order to show himself, Xia Changming walked over, grabbed Jin Jimei's hair, dragged her to the ground, and threw her on the deck. Jin Jimei was in so much pain that she burst into tears and kept begging Jang E for mercy. "Mr. Zhang, I didn't know anything about this. It was all Cha Haicheng. He told me to do it." Cha Haicheng angrily scolded, "Damn bitch. What does this have to do with me? Don't slander me. I was also coerced." Jin Jimei couldn't help but get angry when she saw Cha Haicheng shirking the blame. She pointed at him and shouted at the top of her lungs, "You abominable scum. You planned to escape by yourself, and you didn't even take me with you when you left. Am I just a tool in your eyes?" Cha Haicheng scolded, "Dirty bitch. You dare to talk back to me. If it weren't for me, you would still be in Silla, taking turns to accompany those chaebol every day. I gave you the honor of being the prosecutor's wife. You have to pay the price for it and obey me completely. Jang E just watched them quarreling silently, biting each other in the face of life and death crisis, and dragging each other down even if he died. When the Columbia Navy arrived, Jean Jime was also at a loss. Obviously, she was not aware of the matter. So Jang E could spare her life, because she still had some value. Old Xie, are you interested in this woman? Jang E asked Xie Changming. Xie Changming was stunned for a moment and hurriedly shook his head. No, Mr. Zhang. You can do whatever you want with her. I have no opinion. Jang E waved his hand. I'll leave her to you. Jang E certainly knew what Jean Jime had done on the ship for half a month. She was just a silly woman with some beauty but no brains, and she had always been used as a tool by Che Haicheng. It is said that in order to win the favor of a certain chaebol, she even did an alternative dance performance. Instead of killing her, it would be better to give her to Xie Changming as a favor. Winning people's hearts is also what a superior needs to do. Xie Changming couldn't help but be moved when he heard that Jang E treated him so well. Although there are some women in Chaoyu base, those with decent looks have long been picked up by the upper echelons of the base. Of course, he would be happy to have someone like Jean Jime as his wife. Xie Changming walked over, pulled Jean Jime aside, and warned her fiercely. From now on, you are my woman. You must listen to Mr. Zhang and me obediently, and you are not allowed to have any other thoughts. Jean Jime had experienced a huge shock at this time, and her face was pale. Now that she could survive, she was willing to do anything. She nodded repeatedly to show her agreement. Seeing that she could survive, Che Haicheng cried out, "As long as I can survive, I can do anything. Anything is fine. Please have mercy." Jang E walked over slowly and looked at them all with a smile. "Now, I can chat with you. I'm curious. Why would you give up your good life and choose to betray me?" Several people looked pale, and no one dared to speak. Jang E's smile deepened. "If you tell me, I can make him die more quickly. If you don't tell me, you will regret it." Several people's faces became more and more ugly, and they kept kowtowing and begging for mercy. "We didn't mean to hurt you. We just wanted to go to Columbia." Mo cried. "For God's sake, please forgive me." Jang E smiled and said, "I'm sorry, I don't believe in religion. Is there anything else to say?" Engineer Eisenman tried to stay calm. "You can't kill us. You have sunk a Colombian warship, and now your kidnapping of us has been exposed. If you massacre Colombian citizens again, it will be an aggravated crime. Let us live so that at least you still have bargaining chips to negotiate with the Colombian Navy." Jang E couldn't help laughing. As he laughed, his eyes became cold and full of contempt. "You think too highly of yourselves. If you had that much value, they would have come to take you away long ago. But in fact, you are insignificant and have nothing. Yes. You still think you are valuable and will make them afraid to act rashly? Stop dreaming. You know nothing about the end of the world." He stood up. "Okay, it seems that you are all stubborn, and I don't have so much energy to play with you. Since you have chosen the most painful way to die, of course I have to fulfill your wish." Hearing what Jang E said, the people kneeling on the ground wailed desperately. "You can't do this to us. We just want to live well. What's wrong with us?" Jang E didn't want to continue to pay attention to them, but after hearing this, he couldn't help but turn around and asked, "Then let me ask you, have I abused you since you got on the ship? Have you ever been short of food?" These words made the people speechless. Xie Yunfan argued, "But you killed Yamada Masano and several other Japanese people, which inevitably makes people think too much. You can't blame us." Jang E raised his eyebrows. "You see, you always have so many reasons. And my opinion is add more oil." No one understood what Jang E meant by the second half of his sentence. But they soon understood. Jang E asked with a smile, "Have you ever eaten chuan xiang? This kind of food is rare abroad." As a Chinese, Xie Yunfan often goes back to China and knows that this is a specialty food of Huaxi country. "I've eaten it." Jang E nodded. "That's good." He turned around and said to Lao Tian and others, "Chop them all up, make them into skewers, and roast them on the bow of the boats." Jang E's hatred will not be relieved unless these traitors are cut into pieces. Chapter 875 John Cadell's. Jang E took Zhou Qi back to the cabin. However, he told Lao Tian that everyone on the ship must go to the scene and see the fate of the betrayer with their own eyes. Everyone, including those in the lower cabin, was brought to the deck. Zhu Yonk and Su Nuanxi were no exception. There was no excuse to find. They had to witness the execution of the betrayer with their own eyes. However, because the scene was too cruel, Jang E was a kind-hearted person and couldn't bear to watch it with his own eyes, so he took Zhou Qi away. Soon, the screams outside rang out heartbreakingly. Lao Tian asked Xie Changming to perform the knife. After all, as a chef, he was a good knife player. According to the standards of Chuan Xiang, everyone had to endure at least a few hundred knife punishments. Then they were skewered with sharpened wooden sticks or iron rods and stood on the bow. This punishment was still fresh in the memory of everyone on the ship, and they also saw Jang E's cruel treatment of traitors. Even if they closed their eyes and dared not watch, they still heard the heartbreaking howling. Lu Dahai looked at the guys being executed calmly, with a mocking smile on his face. "I knew you bastards are unreliable." Li Zhongyu, Zhang Weiwei, Ma Wenzheng and others were glad. They did not misjudge the situation and make the wrong decision. At the same time, they were deeply shocked by Jang E's strength. Even though they were both extraordinary people, Li Zhongyu was so weak and pitiful compared to Jang E. They dared not have any bad thoughts in their hearts anymore. Zhu Yonk and Su Nuanxi couldn't stand the scene and vomited several times. Both of them vomited gastric juice, crying and cursing Jang E's cruelty. The execution was fine, but forcing them to watch the whole process was also an extremely cruel torture for the onlookers. But complaints were complaints. Few people sympathized with the fate of these betrayers, because they would have been able to reach the other side smoothly soon and live a stable life. But now, they have to continue drifting on the sea until who knows when. And it could be sunk by Columbia's missiles at any time. All this is because of these hundreds of selfish guys in front of us. Jang E carried out the most cruel punishment on Che Haicheng and a group of traitors. If he didn't do this, he couldn't vent his inner anger. But now that things have come to this, the next voyage must continue. In order to avoid being caught by the Columbia Navy, he had to turn off all the communication equipment on the ship, including sonar and radar. Everyone's communication equipment was confiscated. At the same time, turn on the military-grade shielding equipment on the ship. This also means that they will become blind on the sea and can only sail based on the instinctive judgment of the sailors. But he also knows how much trouble the leakage of the source of God's intelligence will cause. Next, it depends on how Zhu Zheng coordinates. Ropefly Island, Columbia Ocean Fleet Headquarters. Before the blizzard came, the ships in the port had been driven to the deep sea area. So only some small ships near the port were completely frozen, becoming a beautiful landscape on the coastline. However, on the periphery of the ice layer, there are hundreds of ships surrounding the Ropefly Island naval base like stars surrounding the moon. The gray-white steel battleships stand tall like a steel wall. The huge main guns on the battleships extend more than 10 meters in length, which can easily destroy a ship of thousands of tons. And deeper in the ocean, the core of the fleet, the deep-sea monster aircraft carrier that can carry dozens of fighters, has fallen silent. In the Ice Age, super-large aircraft carriers have gradually become unsuitable for the marine environment. The overly large and clumsy body requires exponentially more energy consumption. Nowadays, transporting energy itself is a huge problem. Even if the fuel is transported from the oil-rich Colombian mainland, the consumption in the middle is several times. No matter how you look at it, the cost-effectiveness of aircraft carriers has been greatly reduced. And because its target is too obvious, it is very easy to become the target of the deep-sea overlord. Coupled with the extremely cold temperature, the function of the fighter is also greatly affected. Therefore, the existence of aircraft carriers began to be slowly replaced by small boats during the Ice Age. However, Even if it loses the advantage of aircraft carriers, the Columbia Ocean Fleet, as one of Columbia's most powerful naval forces, still has the strength to dominate the sea. Everything is in order at the naval base, and the severe cold temperatures force the soldiers to wear special cold-proof clothing. The Navy soldiers were on guard around the base with guns. Suddenly, a muffled boom sound came from a distance. This sound attracted the attention of the Navy. They looked in the direction of the sea and saw a white wave suddenly appeared on the sea surface, which was condensed by sea water and ice and snow fragments. It was more than 10 meters above the sea level and was speeding towards the coast. The roar became louder and louder, and the entire Rope Fly Island naval base could hear the sound clearly. Sitting in the office of the Navy commander, 5-star Admiral Douglas, who was smoking a pipe, Admiral C looked out the window and said calmly, "Cardier is back. Bring him to me." The naval colonel next to him, Punka Borcato, saluted and walked out of the office. His face was a little gloomy. "Cardier's, that bastard, is getting more and more arrogant." The huge movement and wonders on the sea attracted more and more people to come and watch. The people in the entire naval base were alarmed. "It looks like Lieutenant Colonel Cardier is back. He likes to make such a big noise every time, but this is what he deserves. If I were like him, with such extraordinary abilities, I would be much more arrogant than him." "Hey, you don't want to say that the commander of the Navy will also be replaced by you? It may not be impossible." The Navy joked lightly, but when they looked at the sea, they were full of envy. The huge white wave came to 2 kilometers outside the naval base before people could see clearly what it was. Fish school. Huge school of fish. Dozens of huge mutant whales as big as hills led the way, followed by all kinds of mutant marine creatures, rushing towards the Rope Fly Island naval base. The densely packed mutants could not be identified, and the entire marine food chain might have gathered here. Standing on the head of the largest whale over 200 meters long was a man wearing a blue and white combat uniform, a sea blue helmet, and only his jaw was exposed. The most powerful alien in the Columbia Naval Base, one of the biggest trump cards, with a deterrent power comparable to that of a strategic H submarine, the strongest single soldier, Lord of the Ocean John Cadell's. Chapter 876, Harnessing All Spirits, Ad 1. He rode the sea spirits and stood proudly on the head of the giant whale like a sea god, with all the sea spirits under his feet, submitting to him. This shocking scene caused a deafening cheer from the Navy headquarters, just to welcome the arrival of Cardier's. The female soldiers even ignored the severe cold, excitedly took out their underwear and shook it in the wind. The male soldiers whistled continuously. Cartier's liked this scene very much, waving his arms forward with a smile on his face. When the tide approached the port, he jumped off the head of the giant whale, and then a wave formed by sea water and broken ice naturally formed under his feet, carrying him forward gracefully. Those terrible marine creatures stayed where they were and did not move forward. Cartier's passed the warships one by one and came to the coast gracefully and calmly. The female soldiers immediately threw the clothes in their hands to him, and colorful butterflies flew in the air. Cartier's reached out and grabbed a sexy bikini with a sly smile on his face. "Wow, this is an amazing size." The laughter and cheers on the shore became louder. The female soldier blew a kiss and shouted, "Hey, Cartier's, do you want to rest at my place tonight?" Cartier's laughed. "I'll consider it." At this time, Navy Captain Borcato had just brought a team of Navy to the shore. Seeing this farce, he took a few deep breaths to suppress his inner restlessness. As a senior naval commander, he hated this kind of grandstanding behavior. However, as the strongest combat force of the Ocean Fleet, Cartier's has always been the favorite of Commander Douglas. Even Borcato, as a superior officer, could not restrain Cartier's behavior. A junior non-commissioned officer is a junior non-commissioned officer. Even if he gains power, he cannot change his vulgar nature. Borcato whispered. Cartier's was just an ordinary corporal before. If it weren't for the end of the world, which made him stand out from the Navy's experiment, he would never have become the darling of the Navy. Borcato thought that he was just a guy who got lucky. But his complaints attracted the attention of Cardier's, who was far away. "Hey, Borcato. Don't whisper behind my back. You are a naval captain after all. Doing so will only make you look petty." Cardier's pointed at Borcato and said bluntly, while walking towards him. Borcato didn't expect that Cardier's could hear his whispers from such a distance. However, he raised his head and said, "Lieutenant Colonel Cardier's, in the military, you should call those who are higher than you as superiors." Hearing this, Cardier's suddenly laughed, showing his white teeth. He walked up to Borcato step by step, and several officers next to Borcato looked at them with some concern. Because Cardier's was a famous madman in the Navy. Cardier's walked up to Borcato and looked down at the naval colonel, who was 5 centimeters shorter than him. Cardier's had a bright smile on his face, but his eyes were cold. "In the entire naval base, only General Douglas deserves my admiration. Who do you think you are?" Borcato was furious. "What qualifications do you have to say such things? You are just a lucky bastard who has a powerful force by chance. And my medal was obtained through one battle after another." Cardier smiled and spread his hands. "Oh, my Colonel Borcato. You are right, but that is a thing of the past." He suddenly reached out and pressed Borcato's shoulder, staring at him coldly. "But now, you are just a muggle. And I am the big boss." From Cardier's ice-blue eyes, an extremely terrifying emotion was released. The strong sense of oppression made Borcato stare at Cardier's, with his eyes wide open. Fortunately, 2 officers nearby stepped forward to rescue him. "Lieutenant Colonel Cardier's, General Douglas asked you to see him immediately. He has something very important to tell you." Hearing Douglas' name, Cardier's put down Borcato in his hand. The naval colonel collapsed to the ground as if he had fainted. Cardier's didn't even look at him. "Since it's the general's call, I'll go." After he said that, he stepped over Borcato's body and strode towards the naval base. If it weren't for the fact that he was at the headquarters of the Ocean Fleet, he might really kill Borcato and then blame it on a neighboring country. But here, he couldn't kill a colonel at will. After Cardier's left, Borcato stared at his back with resentment, and then angrily threw off his hat. The colleague next to him advised, "Forget it, Borcato. We need him now." Borcato took a deep breath and said in a curse-like tone, "He is a test subject of the military, so let him be arrogant for a while. His fate in the future will not be much better." The colleague shrugged. "At least now, we can't afford to provoke him." Chapter 877 Douglas, Ad 1. Cardier's came to Douglas' office and met the naval commander, who liked to smoke an old-fashioned pipe. As the commander of the Columbia Navy's trump card, Douglas has an extremely high prestige in the Navy. Even Cardier's, who is an Epsilon-class alien, is willing to obey this person's orders. All this also stems from the selection of the God-making plan after the end of Columbia. All soldiers participating in the experiment must guarantee their loyalty to Columbia and cannot be crazy and ambitious. For example, Cardier's. His favorite things are women, money, and slot machines. So even if he has powerful power, he will be arrogant at most, but he will never have the idea of subverting the top of the Navy. Because that is very troublesome for him. It is not as good as now, and the benefits are huge. Cardier's met Douglas. The first thing Douglas did was to look at the clock on the wall and said, "You are 2 hours late." Cardier's smiled and sat opposite Douglas. "You know, I'm always very busy. If I hadn't been watching the East China Sea, the fleet of Hwashu would have come out long ago. They have always wanted to occupy a place in the ocean area." Douglas took a puff of his pipe and exhaled white smoke. "There is a more important task for you to do now." He pushed a document on the table in front of Cardier's. "Yesterday afternoon, one of our cruisers was destroyed and all the crew members were killed. And the other side was just an icebreaker. So we concluded that there were top aliens from Hwashu on it." Cardier's flipped through the information on it. "Copernicus. It carries 24 heavy missiles and hundreds of high-speed torpedoes. It was sunk by someone." As he said that, he touched his chin. "But if the other side is an alien, this seems to be very reasonable. After all, you know, this is not a difficult task for me," Cardier's said with a smile. Douglas has long been accustomed to Cardier's personality. The problem now is that the loss of a warship and dozens of soldiers is a huge loss for us. He knocked on the table and said, seriously, we must respond. We must catch the murderer. If we don't do this, others will think that we have lost our ability to rule the ocean area. Seeing Douglas's serious expression, Cardier's also restrained his frivolous smile. Is the opponent strong? There is no key information yet. But according to our intelligence, the ship came from the Jiangnan region of Huashu country, and there are no Epsilon-level aliens in the Jiangnan region. Cardier smiled easily. If that's the case, there is no need for me to take action at all, right? Douglas said, but I don't want a dead person. I want a living one. He has very important information on him. If you want to capture him alive, you must take action. Cardier's face was full of a relaxed expression. Although it is a bit troublesome to catch people, the opponent has not even reached the Epsilon level. Moreover, the main battlefield is on the sea. For him, this mission may waste some time, but there is no risk at all. So, he spread his hands. Since you have made the request in person, I will definitely agree. General Douglas nodded. The other party is very cunning and has probably stopped all actions that can send information to the outside world. The Navy's reconnaissance equipment can't find him. You have to use your own ability to find him. I knew it was a troublesome job.
Well,
who made me a member of the Navy? Anyway, just wait for my good news. After hearing this, Cardier stood up and walked out. By the way, General, I have a suggestion for you. He turned around and pointed at Douglas and said, Boltok is a fool. You'd better transfer him out of the headquarters as soon as possible. I think it would be a good idea to let him go to the fisheries department to catch fish. After that, he smiled and left Douglas' office. Douglas took 2 puffs of his pipe, looked at his arrogant appearance, and smiled and shook his head. Although Cardier's has an arrogant personality, it must be said that he is still a very useful soldier. At least he can complete the tasks he is asked to do very well. Douglas can give him whatever Cardier's likes. Money, power, women, and the vanity of being admired by thousands of people. As long as he is willing to obey Douglas's management, all this will be fine. Cardier's walked out of Douglas' office. He put his hands on his hips and exhaled a breath of foul air, complaining, what a trouble. I am the king of the ocean, and you asked me to be an investigator. Don't let me catch that damn kid. Otherwise, I will stuff you into the octopus's slime for whole days. Just as he was complaining, a beautiful woman in military uniform and with blonde hair walked over gracefully in high heels, holding a stack of documents. P.S. These 2 chapters are only 1,500 words. I don't know why the number of words was less at the beginning, so it is counted as an extra chapter. Douyin, the Sea of Memory, often broadcast live. If you are interested, please follow us and chat. Chapter 878. Rose Team. Cardier's eyes lit up. The girl in front of him was very beautiful. She was his cup of tea. But in fact, his taste was very complex, especially after he had power.
He
could even be described as not rejecting anyone. He walked over and blocked the blonde's way. Hello, beautiful lady, what's your name? When the blonde saw Cardier's, she immediately remembered the legend about him. Her heart beat fast, and she was nervous and excited. My name is Jelena, sir. Jelena, a beautiful name, as beautiful as you. Cardier smiled and took her hand, and his other hand went to her shoulders. I'm going to carry out the mission soon, so before I leave, can you comfort my tired body? Sir, but I still have to. No. Don't talk. This is your duty, so you can't refuse. Jelena had to swallow the fact that she was going to deliver important documents to Douglas. Because Douglas had verbally told everyone around him. If Cardier's liked any woman, he would satisfy him unconditionally, even if she was the general's wife. Of course, Douglas's wife is not at risk in this regard, because she is already an old woman in her 50s. Cardier's has not had such a perverted interest. Because Jang E sank the Copernicus, and because the news of the source of God was leaked, the consequences were undoubtedly huge. Zhu Zheng and Douglas were both taking active actions to get the information of the source of God. Although the Jiangnan region is far from being comparable to the Columbia Ocean Fleet in the naval field, he also has his own way. At the first time, he arranged for Jang E to flee to the southwest. Because there was an investigation team he had sent out to carry out the mission before. In the Southwest Sea area, where an island is located, raging black smoke spread to the sky. The cold ice sea was briefly warmed by the burning of flames. Hundreds of large and small ships were almost destroyed at this time. The captain of the 6th Division of the Tianlong pirates, Babu, was extremely embarrassed at this time. His face was stepped on hard by a high-heeled shoe, his body was covered with horrible wounds, and blood soaked the deck below him. Bab, I'll ask you one last time. Where is the lair of the Dragon King? The cold voice came from a cold woman. She was wearing a blue and white combat uniform, a white military cap, and natural chestnut curls down to her back. Her resolute face and a pair of ice-blue eyes were particularly eye-catching, especially the pair of sword-like sharp eyebrows, which gave people a sense of solemnity. She was the captain of the Rose Squad, Tyne Star Lord, Guanghan Ferry Linghu Feishua. Bab was covered in wounds and had been tortured to the point of being unrecognizable. His body was terribly bloated. But in the face of Linghu Feishua's torture, he still sneered.
I won't tell you, bitch.
You will never find the Dragon Island. Linghu Feishua looked at him coldly, then exerted force with her feet and pierced his eyeball. Bab screamed like a pig being slaughtered. At this time, a member of the Rose team came over and said to Linghu Feishua, Captain, an urgent call from headquarters. Linghu Feishua heard this and said to Babu, Let's stop here today. I've had enough fun. She turned around and left. Suddenly, huge colorful bubbles appeared in the air, shining and charming like a dream. Those bubbles gathered around Babu and even went into his body through his 7 orifices. Woo-woo. Babu soon fell into suffocation and didn't even have the strength to struggle. But a moment later, his body exploded violently and turned into mincemeat. Linghu Feishua returned to the boat and took the call from Zhu Zheng. Commander, this is Linghu Feishua. Linghu Feishua sat on the chair, with her legs crossed. When talking to Zhu Zheng, she was as indifferent as usual. Zhu Zheng seemed to be used to it and didn't pursue her rudeness. He just asked, How is the mission in the South China Sea going? Linghu Feishua said, The people of the Tianlong pirates are very cunning, and their nests are always changing. It is very difficult to lock their location. I just wiped out their 6th division, but according to the speed at which these pirates are expanding in the South China Sea, this may not help. Soon they will use refugees from all sides to expand their own power. Zhu Zheng said, Put aside this mission for the time being. There is another important thing for you to complete. Oh. Linghu Feishua's eyes showed a strange luster. Changing the mission midway? This is the first time it has happened. If it weren't for a particularly important emergency, Zhu Zheng would not make this choice. Because any mission requires a long time of preparation before it can be carried out. Zhu Zheng is serious. Chaos is out on a mission and is now having a conflict with the Columbia Navy. I asked him to flee in the direction you are in. Go and pick him up immediately. Make sure to bring him back safely. Linghu Feishua showed a curious expression for the first time when she heard the word chaos. Chaos? Is he the one who defeated Gao Chongkong's? The mission that could send that person out must be very important. Linghu Feishua did not ask any more questions. I understand. I will pick him up. I understand. I will pick him up. Zhu Zheng continued. In order to avoid being discovered by the Columbia Navy, they cannot communicate with the outside world. You have to find a way to find them on the vast ocean. I have already transmitted their information to you. Linghu Feishua smiled. Okay, I understand. After ending the call, Linghu Feishua checked the information about the Gan Foam and Jang E. She smiled faintly and immediately gave orders to all the team members. Kill all the pirates here, and then we will turn around and head south. Gu Yufei, a female team member with long hair, came to Linghu Feishua. Captains, Linghu Feishua told her about the search. Ask your friends to help find the ship of Huashu country. After receiving the order, Gu Yufei immediately came to the side of the ship. She put her hands on her chest, opened her cherry lips, and made a beautiful and magical sound.
Arya.
This ability can communicate with all living things. After more than 10 minutes, a group of dolphins passed through the layers of broken ice, making sharp calls to respond to Gu Yufei. Gu Yufei smiled gently, lowered her head to look at them, and asked them to find the ship. The dolphins responded to Gu Yufei happily, then dived into the water and swam in all directions. Chapter 879 Regional Cooperation. After Zhu Zheng contacted the Rose Squad, he felt a little relieved. However, he knew very well that the Rose Squad alone could not compete with the Columbia Navy. There must be a strong naval force that can hold back the Columbia Navy and buy time for Jang E and the Rose Squad to escape. Otherwise, even if Jang E and his team escaped to the ends of the earth, they would not be able to find a way back to the Jiangnan region on the sea. I have to talk to Lao Li. Zhu Zheng sighed. Not long ago, the Columbia Navy had contacted him. It was just an official document expressing the justice of their actions. Of course, they did not mention their attempt to forcibly seize the ship, but only brought up the fact that Jang E sank the Copernicus. When big countries act, they still need a reason to act, which is the basic tacit understanding between each other. As for Zhu Zheng's explanation, Douglas would not pay any attention to it. Therefore, Zhu Zheng planned to contact the East China Sea region and ask them to help him buy space for Jang E. But to do so, he must pay a sufficient price. Zhu Zheng turned on the computer, thought about it, and sent a picture to Li Guangxiao. Then he sat at his desk, silently waiting for Li Guangxiao's response. Sure enough, a few minutes later, Li Guangxiao's communication came. Zhu Zheng connected the video call. On the other side of the video, Li Guangxiao's face was full of smiles, and at the same time, there was a hint of urgency. Old Zhu, have you found the source of God? They all have information about the source of God, which was given to them by Shengjing District. Although Shengjing District will not share the source of God, it will share intelligence with them. After all, the 6 districts are a family and depend on each other. So Zhu Zheng and Li Guangxiao have seen the picture of the source of God. Because of this, Li Guangxiao was excited the first time he saw the picture. Zhu Zheng said with a smile, "Old Li, don't worry, listen to me slowly." He explained the cause and effect of the matter to Li Guangxiao, but hid a lot of key information. Just say to go to the sea to rescue a person who knows the information about the source of God. He kept all the information about Li Zhongyu confidential. After listening to Zhu Zheng's words, Li Guangxiao couldn't help but take a breath. The boy under your command is really cruel. He dared to sink a cruiser of Columbia in the ocean area. If this behavior was in the past, it would be a major accident that could trigger a national war. Zhu Zheng snorted coldly. What time is it now? It's not a peaceful era. Besides, if they didn't attack first, how could my people fight back? Li Guangxiao stretched out his voice. Oh, if it's for the source of God, this is also very reasonable. Not to mention sinking a cruiser. Even if we fight with them, it's worth it. Now, many top international forces know the existence of the source of God. It's unknown when this mysterious thing appeared. But its power is extremely amazing, and it can allow a top Delta-level alien to be promoted to Epsilon. Everyone knows how strong the Epsilon-level alien is. The more senior the alien is, the greater the strategic significance of this alien. With the advent of the era of great mutation, there will be more and more aliens. There may even be a day in the future when ordinary soldiers will be replaced by aliens. By that time, the presence of hot weapons will become weaker and weaker. If countries want to maintain their own strength, they must make arrangements in advance. The power of weapons is limited. The power of aliens has not yet found its upper limit. Li Guangxiao said to Zhu Zheng, "You want my people to help you, right?" Zhu Zheng smiled and said, "That's exactly what I think." Li Guangxiao laughed, and the old fox had already begun to think about the cost-effectiveness of doing so. They are now confronting Columbia in the East China Sea, and no one dares to act rashly. Strictly speaking, the strength of the Navy of the East China Sea region and the Columbia Ocean Fleet is comparable. But they have the advantage of their homeland and can launch missiles from land to directly attack the Columbia Fleet or even the headquarters. It's not impossible for us to help you, but we can only delay them, and we won't really engage in a large-scale naval battle with them. In addition, you must share the intelligence of the source of God with me when the time comes. Li Guangxiao made his request directly. Zhu Zheng and Li Guangxiao are also old friends, and both of them are military men, so they won't drag their feet. The conditions proposed by Li Guangxiao were not excessive, and Zhu Zheng really needed their help, so he agreed. Okay, when the time comes to obtain the source of God, we can join forces.
Okay.
I'll send people to the East China Sea right away to put pressure on them. The two did not discuss how to distribute the source of God. It's not that they don't want to talk about it, but so far, except for some people in Shengjing, other regions have not come into contact with this kind of thing. They don't even know what form the source of God is in and whether it can be divided. But there is one thing that both of them know. When there are external enemies, they must join forces to resolve external conflicts first. Old Li, you must do your best. After all, the person I sent out is very important to the Jiangnan region. If you can't stand the pressure, maybe I'll have to ask the one in Xinjiang for help. Zhu Zheng said earnestly. No matter what Jang E's attitude is, he is indeed the strongest fighter in the Jiangnan region now. In any case, Zhu Zheng must protect Jang E. The Jiangnan region has experienced a series of blows and can no longer afford to lose another top fighter. Li Guangxiao really felt the pressure. If Shengjing intervenes in this matter, I'm afraid they can only drink soup. Because Shengjing's style of doing things has always been domineering, coupled with the terrifying owner of the Hell Guillotine ability, once they take action, both Jiangnan and Donghai will become foils. Old Zhu, what are you talking about? Our East China Sea region is not that bad. Li Guangxiao said angrily, just watch me. What world number one? What's the point of bragging? I'm fighting the elite. Zhu Zheng nodded with a smile. Okay, then I'll rely on you. I won't let you fight in vain. The military rations for this operation will be supplied by our Jiangnan region. Jiangnan is rich and occupies one of the two major granaries in the Central Plains. Now it has slowly recovered after the end of the world and began to use scientific and technological capabilities to restore productivity. The combat power may not be as good as that of East China Sea and Shengjing, but in terms of supplies, it makes other regions jealous. Okay, then we have a deal. After the two finished discussing, Li Guangxiao immediately ordered to monitor all movements of the Columbia Navy. In addition, in order to show enough deterrence, he directly dispatched the four most powerful naval formations in the East China Sea region to the direction of Neon Rope Fly Island. Chapter 880. Jiu. Because Jang E sank the Copernicus, the entire East China Sea region was in turmoil. In order to obtain information about the source of God, the Columbia Ocean Fleet did not hesitate to dispatch the highest combat force, Cardiers. The Jiangnan District and the East China Sea District of Huaxi Country also sent enough people. Their goal is exactly the same, that is, to block all news and move forward in the dark on the vast ocean. Like a butterfly effect, the actions of the two major powers also set off huge ripples around them, involving many small countries. Regarding the confrontation between the two navies, no one in the outside world knows what the reason is. Only the information obtained on the surface is because of the sinking of a Columbia warship. But everyone knows that at such an extraordinary moment, the two superpowers cannot easily start a war. If there is, it must be because of some huge interests or contradictions. However, whether it is Jiangnan, East China Sea, or the Columbia Ocean Fleet, it is impossible to leak this. Even to the highest level of Shengjing District or Columbia, they tacitly chose to conceal it. After all, they all want to take the good things like the source of God into their own pockets, rather than share them with others. The 6 regions of Huaxi Country, although they are of the same blood, also have their own power of local governance. The same is true in Colombia. The states are united and hostile to each other and are also divided into multiple groups. They can unite when facing the outside world. But when there is no external pressure, they will also compete with each other for the right to speak. In short, the situation in the East China Sea soon became a mess. Li Guangxiao, the supreme commander of the East China Sea region, directly ordered the 4 most powerful formations under his command to go to the East China Sea to shock Douglas. These 4 formations are commanded by the 4 top aliens in the East China Sea region. Due to official confidentiality, their personal information is unknown to the outside world. It is only known that in the official announcement, they are named after the 4 ancient spirits of Huashu country.
They
are Qinglong, Baihu, Zhuke, and Xuanwu. It is said that it was not easy for the 4 captains of the East China Sea region to obtain these 4 titles. Because these 4 titles are too popular, many top aliens in the region hope to use them as titles. However, all the contenders gave up the competition in the end. There was only one reason: they noticed the gap in strength. The 4 spirit fleets were dispatched, approaching the Columbia Ocean Fleet headquarters and looking across the sea at the major ports of the Ropefly Island. This forced Douglas to mobilize a large number of ships to confront them. And this also relieved a lot of pressure for Jang E. Blizzard City. Zhu Zheng was busy for 2 consecutive days for Jang E's affairs. His calls were basically one after another. It was about the game between the big countries, and no details could be missed. Especially this time the matter was a big deal, and other regions of Huashu country were paying attention. First of all, Zhu Zheng had to find a way to explain the inquiries from the Xinjiang region. They must control the conflict within the threshold, and they cannot expand the war because of Jang E or a source of God. After a busy time, Zhu Zheng was also physically and mentally exhausted. But he thought it was all worth it, because Li Lingxue once said,
Zhang
Yi's upper limit is definitely not just the delta level. He is an extremely rare person who has the talent of Epsilon or even above. That is an existence that can only appear among hundreds of millions of people. The strongest person known in Huashu country at present, the owner of the Hell Guillotine ability in Xinjiang district, the transcendent existence codenamed Ho-2, is this kind of natural Epsilon. If Jang E can get the source of God, he may have power that is no less than Ho-2. By then, my Jiangnan district will also get rid of the hat of the weakest combat power among the 6 districts. Zhu Zheng took a deep breath and said to himself lightly, Jang E's loyalty is beyond doubt. Gao Changkong almost killed him at the beginning, and it was Jang E who rescued him. The most important thing is that he is a person who has no desire for power, and Zhu Zheng is most assured of such a person. If even Jang E cannot be trusted, then no one in the entire Blizzard City will be able to gain his trust. But at this time, he couldn't help but think of Gao Changkong and sighed. If Jang E has the talent of Epsilon, Gao Changkong may also be the same. It's just that the past is unbearable to look back. Now the 2 sides are in a position of life and death, and it is difficult to discuss right and wrong. Just when Zhu Zheng was sighing with emotion, Lan Xinqing came to report that Li Lingxue from the research department came to see him. She also brought a little girl with her. When Lan Xinqing said this, he glanced at Li Lingxue next to him and the little girl who was hiding timidly behind Li Lingxue's legs. She was only 5 or 6 years old, with big eyes, but with a strange sense of emptiness. Innocent and ignorant, like an angel who had just descended to the world, with a kind of beauty that was ignorant of the world. Lan Xinqing didn't understand why Li Lingxue would bring such a child with her. However, Li Lingxue, this woman, originally had a bad reputation. People who knew her thought she was a scientist. Weird people often do things that others cannot understand. When Zhu Zheng heard this, a strange look emerged in his eyes. Let them come over. Yes. Lan Xinqing allowed Li Lingxue and the little girl to see Zhu Zheng. Since the Gao Changkong incident, the security level around Zhu Zheng has been raised. If you want to see him, you must go through layers of verification. Except for a very few people such as Jang E, no one else can see Zhu Zheng directly. And the guard Sun Luxuan even eats and lives with Zhu Zheng and never leaves his side. It is said that because of this incident, Zhu Zheng's wife is a little dissatisfied, but as a mature woman, she can completely overcome such trivial matters by herself. Li Lingxue brought the angelic little girl to Zhu Zheng's office. Who is she? Zhu Zheng looked at the little girl, pointed at her curiously, and asked Li Lingxue, what is the sequence? Li Lingxue wore thick black-rimmed glasses with deep dark circles under her eyes. She always looked like she hadn't woken up. Test product number 486. She is the most special one, and the only one that has successfully shed its shell. Zhu Zheng's expression suddenly became excited. He stood up from his chair and walked to the girl who looked ignorant and naive, like a newly hatched chick. The girl hid behind Li Lingxue in fear. Li Lingxue said to herself, "She has integrated our latest technology and materials, and the comprehensive index of all aspects of data is extremely high. It can be said that she is the most perfect test product we have obtained since the end of the world." Zhu Zheng stretched out his hand to stop Li Lingxue from continuing to speak. "No, don't call her that. She should have her own name." Zhu Zheng squatted down and stared at the little girl with a kind face. "From now on, your name will be Zhu Yu. I know that my brothers are climbing to the heights, and there is one less person wearing dogwood branches." The girl blinked her big eyes and whispered, "Zhu.
You.
Thanks for staying tuned. Please subscribe for more videos.